Well, I'm here in beautiful Portishead, and what a glorious day to be here with Vitality Rose's head coach, Jess Thirlby. And Jess, you live in this beautiful part of the country. Thank you so much for inviting me down when there's a heat wave as well.
I know, it's good timing. Thanks for making the long journey down the motorway.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And we're going to talk about the Commonwealth Games, we're going to talk about the build-up, what happened, and look to the future of the Roses as well. But you've really not had very long to process the games and what happened, but just looking back now, how proud are you of the team, both on and off the court, in the run-up to and then throughout the games?
Yeah, look, I could not be prouder of not just the players but the staff. I think as a collective, we've got enough humility in the group to know that we can be better, but we've also given our all. Just over the last few years, the prep coming into the village, how we've gone about our business, in particular the players, I think I'm really hopeful that they've had a huge impact on inspiring a next generation to want to engage with us and the sport more widely. And I think the camaraderie between the group, but also how professional everybody is. We have given it our all, and whilst the overall result is disappointing, I can't feel anything but pride when I look and hear and see the interactions of both internally but also externally with our wider public and fan base. And yeah, you know, I'm super proud of how much we've put into giving ourselves the best possible chance. And this time it's not ours, sadly, but that should never really, for me, it should never fog over the beauty of the people that you work with and the intent behind them. So yeah, I've got a lot of love for the team and the staff.
Which is something you've talked about all the way through. We've chatted before the games, well in advance of, and through the games, and actually after that bronze medal match as well. And I think the family and the ethos that you've created is something that is really important to you, and we'll come to that a little bit more. But you also touched there on the run-up to the Commonwealth Games this time and the last few years, and really the last 12 months, which have been hugely successful for England netball. So you won over in New Zealand that series on their soil, which was history in the making. Then the Jamaica series, the Roses Reunited series back in the UK, which you won as well. And you made it to a final of the Quad Series. I think it has actually been the most successful international window. So coming into the Commonwealth Games, you must have felt on a real high.
Yeah, we certainly, as you say, historically we've always been ranked third or fourth in the world, and we continue to be ranked third going into the Commonwealth Games. So I think to have built some momentum was really important, because with any team to instill a genuine belief, and I mean genuine belief, that you can compete with the best in the world, you do have to start incrementally finding the wins along the way, and between major tournaments. So I think the fact that we were able to get, as you say, historic wins against the world champions in New Zealand on their home soil, to beat Jamaica for the first time at home in 10 years, to give Australia a good run for their money in quad and make the first ever quad final, those were all important steps on the journey. So it built a confidence, and it also built an optimism. And I think arriving at the starting line for the Commonwealth Games in that position is the best we could have hoped and wished for. And we had planned, prepared and worked hard for that too. So I was super pleased that as a group we were able to put ourselves in a position where we'd given ourselves some evidence that we are there or thereabouts, and we're certainly going to compete with the best in the world.
Was it unusual for you as a team to meet them in the semi-finals, because that isn't necessarily where we've met them before? You know, we if we're honest, we're probably expecting to see Jamaica. So did that change the thinking?
Yeah, look, I think based on world rankings, people may have assumed that. I certainly didn't assume that. I felt that Jamaica were always looking strong coming into this Commonwealth Games. I thought their watershed moment is coming, and to an extent they've had it, but I think there's even more still to come from them. So I hadn't really set my sights on even getting dragged into, I would rather have Australia or Jamaica, or I just didn't entertain those conversations really in the months leading into the tournament, because to do what we set out to do, you have to beat everybody and you have to perform at your best in the latter end of the tournament. So it is unusual, and it is hard coming up against a team that know nothing other than making a Commonwealth Games final. You add in the mix that, you know, the revenge from 4 years ago and wanting to kind of take us on home soil, and all of, you know, the lovely story that goes around an England-Australia match now. And, you know, it was always going to be a struggle. They're number one for a reason, and let's be honest, despite the years of COVID and how we've all had to navigate our way through, the world rankings haven't shifted. And that's our reality. So factually, we were meeting the number one team, playing their best netball in the cauldron of a home games, the expectations that come with that, but also the drive and motivation on their part, I guess. So yeah, it was unusual, but how good is it for the sport and the growth of the game that global netball is shifting and has shifted, I would say, over the last 4 or 5 years. And that's, you know, you saw that in 2018, and I think it's meant that everybody's had to pay a bit more attention. No longer is it easy to say it's an Australia-New Zealand final, and we would so loved for us to match up against Jamaica in that final, and that, you know, that in itself would have been a great story for world netball. So yes and no, but we didn't shy away from the challenge of meeting them in the semi-final, and what a great opportunity had we managed to get over the line to kind of push them out of that. But they've gone on to win it. So ultimately, we've lost to the winners of the Commonwealth Games. There's no shame in that, but obviously there's going to be disappointment for a while. We're going to feel a bit bruised, I think.
Just in terms of the fans and in terms of Birmingham, let's talk about a home Commonwealth Games, because the feeling inside that stadium was like nothing I don't think I've ever experienced before. And I was at the World Cup in 2019 in Liverpool. I think there was so much love and so much excitement around the sport. Did you feel that as a team? Yeah,
look, the groundswell of support in that arena was something really special. We kind of anticipated it would be that way, and having played in so many empty stadiums in recent years and had to be kind of our biggest cheerleaders, to be surrounded by that level of noise, the energy was great. You know, I loved the whole environment and atmosphere that was created in that arena. I think there were a few things that made it really special. The fact that we only had a single court. I too was in Liverpool for the World Cup, and double courts going on is a great festival for the games, but actually to have all eyes on one court and on our roses, I think was an incredibly special and intimate moment for the team, and you saw how they embraced it. They absolutely loved it. I think it certainly elevated and energised them coming onto the court, and to have sellout crowds in one of the bigger events, I think, across the Commonwealth Games for Team England was just joyous, really.
And what about the ethos inside the team itself? Because that's something that you've really worked on, and a lot of the players have spoken about it. In terms of coming in with a really good vibe. Can you tell us how that felt?
Yeah, look, they're a really special group. It does mean a lot for me, because I think the culture and the feel and the energy and the connectedness of a group does translate into how they perform and their capability to perform. And so getting that right is important. Look, I can't take all the credit for that, because the player group are outstanding, and we're full of leaders, we're full of great characters, people who absolutely get the balance right between professionalism and a huge desire and passion to be successful. Don't ever mistake their ability to have fun, smile, dance, join in on a TikTok just before the first whistle of a game, Helen Housby. Don't ever mistake that for their seriousness and desire to want to go out and be successful. I think they go hand in hand. So the vibe in the group was excellent. More important to me is the inner belief that the group have in their ability to compete with the best in the world. It's so lovely to hear of how much belief they feel they had getting to the starting line, as we went deeper into the tournament, as we built with our performances, as we met the likes of New Zealand in our final pool round and the semi-final and then the bronze medal match. There's a belief in that group that still holds really strong. And I think this is a real measure now, isn't it, as to the culture of the team, because how we respond in the aftermath of a disappointment, it's because we have such belief in ourselves, and because we have started to build a confidence and an optimism around our ability to do that, that the fall when you lose feels a little bit harsher and from a higher height, and it's a bit brutal. But we'll come back stronger from it. We will, because one, you have a choice to make, and it would be easy now, wouldn't it, to lower our standards and expectations of ourselves. I'm not hearing that, and I certainly don't believe that, and neither does the group. So we have to see it as part of our journey, however hard it feels, and get ourselves back up, dust ourselves off, and look forward to what is a brilliant calendar of opportunities as we head towards Cape Town next year.
Which we will come to, because there's so much to talk about in the netball world, and there's been a lot of interest in netball. There's been a lot of conversation around the sport as well, and some of the questions coming out of the games are, could we have done better? And how do you feel about finishing in that 4th place?
Yeah, look, I think when you lose, you always hope you could have done better. But I think also to suggest that we could have done better is almost suggesting that there was something missing in our preparation, or that the players or we weren't giving our best on the day, and I don't believe that to be true. So I think, you know, the last 12 months have shown us and provided us with some evidence that on any given day we could beat Jamaica, we could beat New Zealand, we could compete with Australia, and that's what is important to hold true. I think the margins now between 2nd, 3rd, 4th are so slim that you'll get punished. And so do I think there were moments in games where we weren't at our best? Absolutely, because I think there were moments of a little bit of vulnerability, and we weren't quite as clinical as we needed to be, as I say, when we won ball, which was hard to find against the better teams, and it always will be. So we're realistic about that. So I think I would be reluctant to kind of move straight into that space of we could have been better, because what if some of what we did was our best on the day? And yes, there are areas that, you know, I can already see that we will want to look back on and better ourselves performance wise, and how might we go about that. And part of that is some bigger picture stuff around more exposure, big stages, bigger cauldrons, and we will do that, and we will uncover and excavate everything we need to be better. But I would be reluctant to not, I guess, be too tempted to think about wholesale changes or that we were way off the mark. I think on any given day, any of those top 4 can beat each other. We had evidence against 2 of those top 4 in the last 12 months, and we knew that we had competed well with Australia in quad. That's what we entered the tournament with. Best position we could have put ourselves in, best position of any team going into Commonwealth Games. And we have to just live with the brutality of those small margins on this occasion.
Tell me about change, because you've mentioned it to me before, and you said before World Cup you will see changes in this squad again. Can you say anything more about that? Well,
no, I guess, look, there's an inevitability. I would have been privy to some of those retirement announcements, obviously long before the public. And, you know, with any group, you look across, I always feel like succession planning is so important. So there are always going to be some athletes that you know are at risk of either retiring, or whether it's, you know, on their terms, or whether or not that gets to a point where they're not necessarily consistently able to put out the performances that are required at the top level. But so with Stacey and Ebony, there will naturally be opportunity in that defensive end, but you've already seen so many others anyway over the last few years, you know, like Fran Williams, outstanding, you know, like she's been such a core member of the team. Everyone, you know, protesting that they want Fumi in the team. You know, I love how engaged everybody is around the people that they see bubbling up just underneath what was this Commonwealth Games 12, as we now look forward on the horizon of another major tournament in the World Cup. So, you know, there are the likes of Amy Carter is introduced back into the programme off the back of injury. She showed such good form, you know, in the infancy of my role when I started. And then you've got a futures programme that's doubled in numbers. We reflect 8 of our Super League franchises across our programme. It's just a really exciting time.
And taking those fans with you as well, which is something that you've really built into the England setup, I think. You know, I certainly feel that we've got more access to players than we've ever had before, and we've got more insight from you as well, you know, with the head coach role, which is brilliant. We want that. We want to hear what's going on. Nod then to Stacey Francis-Bayman and Ebony Azuro-Brown as they're retiring. What are those 2 players given this team?
Oh, look, it's a real, I'm going to get sentimental now because I've known them for such a long time, and I remember when I was doing my job at Bath, and part of that role was to take the Bucks team, the university team, Stacey was a youngster and desperate to get involved in the Super League setup, and we went to the University of Birmingham for our Bucks final. I just remember this one lonely person, because there were no crowds then, and it was Stacey as a 16-year-old, like desperate to get involved at Team Bath in the setup at the time. And that she did. Her family emigrated to Canada, and she made such a tough and bold decision to stay behind because she had such a desire to want to achieve in her netball. And look at her now, like bowing out of a home Commonwealth Games. It is the stuff of fairy tales. If only we could have sent her away with something around her neck. But I've said to her that she could have asked no more of herself. Her contribution was excellent. And it would be unfair to say ditto, but Ebony Osoro-Brown, Ebony Beckford-Chambers, as I've known her for most of our lives together really, always been a true testament to how to juggle both academia back in the day, so University of Bristol doing her law degree whilst training full time. She was our under-21 captain in the World Youth Cup in 2009. She's gone on now she's held that dual career for much of her Rose's senior outings, and is now a mum, and what a pioneer. So I think what speaks most about both of them is their ability to connect with so many people in so many different ways beyond the netball court, and to show and prove and to celebrate like how it can be done, and I love that, and I want to thank them both for the impact they've had on me as a person and on me as a coach, and we had a really beautiful moment actually in the changing room before we came out for our final match. It just so happened everyone else had vacated apart from the three of us, and I just went straight in for a group hug, and not knowing there was one other person left who's managed to capture that in a photo, and I will hold that really dear actually, because they're brilliant people, they're very driven women, they're independent, but they're also got a soft centre, and I love the fact that I've been privy to seeing both sides of them across their careers.
You've had a playing career, you came fourth in a Commonwealth Games, you know how that feels already, and you've got to build out of it again. Are you ready?
I will be. I am ready. I will be ready, and the review, as it should be, has already started, and that out of that review will become more robust, and it will hopefully just fine-tune where we need to make incremental change, but certainly what I'm not hearing is wholesale change, and that's not what I'm seeing. So an unwavering belief in the ability of this group and those that may join it in the years to come.
And you always talk about the journey, so let's finish with the journey and the future. The Ugandan series is coming up, then we're going to go over to Australia and we're going to play them again. What are your hopes for the next 12 months heading towards World Cup?
Yeah, look, I think it's really important, well, firstly, the fact that we have the Uganda series that coincides also with a group that will go overseas to play Australia, in itself tells you everything about how driven we are to expose more athletes to international netball. So both of those series are going to be hugely competitive. We're going to be able to expose up to 30 players to international netball early in the year as well, which is also important because we then have time between that to capture the learnings from that, and then become even more performance focused as we head towards January. So stick with us is kind of my call to arms of our fans, because part of winning is learning how to win. And you also have to do that with a broad group. And one thing I am really proud of is the number of players we've exposed over the last few years. And we got to that starting line absorbing some losses and still with a team that believe that they can compete with the best. And I don't think that would have been the case 3 years ago. So I'm really proud of that, and I'll continue to make sure I provide opportunity where it is earned, and where I believe the team need it to be in order to give ourselves the best chance next year. And
you promise to take us with you, because we, the fans, we want to be there up with you.
Yeah, of course. And just thank you to everybody for your support as well. It doesn't go unnoticed, and it means a lot.